The courtroom was buzzing with quiet murmurs and the occasional shuffle of papers. A few minutes remained before the next hearing, and Officer Grant, a mid-level deputy with a reputation for being strict on strangers, scanned the room with narrowed eyes. A woman entered through the rear doors, tall, confident, dressed in a sharp navy blue suit. Her natural hair was styled in tight curls, her posture calm but assertive. She took a seat near the front, drawing a few curious glances from the clerks and junior staff. Her presence didn't go unnoticed. Officer Grant's gaze locked on her. Something about her confidence unsettled him. He approached, his boots echoing off the wooden floors. "Ma'am," he said, lowering his voice but keeping a firm tone, "this section is for legal personnel only. You'll need to move to the back." The woman looked up slowly, meeting his gaze. "I'm exactly where I need to be," she replied calmly. Grant raised an eyebrow. "I don't think you understand. This area's restricted. Either move or I'll escort you out." She smiled faintly. "Try it." The defiance in her tone caught him off guard. People rarely pushed back. A nearby clerk began to approach, eyes wide, but hesitated. She clearly recognized the woman, and the mistake unfolding. "Is there a problem, officer?" a voice called out from across the courtroom. Judge Keller had entered, his robe swaying as he approached the bench. Grant straightened. "Just handling a situation, Your Honor. She's sitting in a reserved section." Judge Keller frowned, glancing at the woman and then back at Grant. "You're handling the situation, huh?" Grant nodded, unsure why the judge's tone suddenly sounded amused, or perhaps disapproving. The woman rose slowly from her seat and turned to face the room. "I'd like to make an introduction," she said calmly, her voice carrying authority. "I'm Chief Alexandria Ward, the newly appointed head of this city's police department." A dead silence fell over the courtroom. Grant's face went pale. Grant's breath caught in his throat. "Chief of Police." His eyes flicked from her tailored badge pin, polished and gleaming, to the composed look on her face. She wasn't bluffing. And the room knew it. The clerk at the back nodded slightly, confirming what Grant's instincts now screamed: he had just tried to eject the highest-ranking law enforcement officer in the city. I wasn't informed," Grant stammered, shifting his stance. His voice, once stern and commanding, now sounded uncertain. Chief Ward didn't flinch. "That much is obvious." Her words weren't angry. They were cool, steady, the kind that cut deeper than shouting ever could. The judge cleared his throat. "Officer Grant, perhaps you should take a moment to regroup outside." Grant hesitated, then nodded stiffly. "Yes, Your Honor." He turned to leave, but Chief Ward held up a hand. "No need," she said calmly. "Let him stay. This is as much a lesson for the room as it is for him." Whispers rippled through the courtroom again, some of the staff glancing between one another. No one dared speak aloud. She continued. "Let me clarify something, for everyone present. I didn't come here today in uniform, but that doesn't change who I am. Titles shouldn't be the only thing that commands respect." Grant stood frozen, staring at the ground. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Chief Ward stepped forward slightly. "I'm not here to humiliate anyone. But assumptions, unchecked, have consequences. If I had been anyone else today, a witness, a victim, even a lawyer, this situation would still be unacceptable." Judge Keller nodded slowly, watching her with what looked like quiet admiration. "Understood, Chief Ward." She glanced back at Officer Grant one last time. "Growth begins when people are willing to look inward. I hope you're ready for that." She returned to her seat, calm and unbothered, as if nothing had happened. But the room felt completely changed. The courtroom resumed its rhythm, but the air felt heavier. Conversations were hushed. Even the usual courtroom banter between clerks and attorneys was muted, everyone still processing what had unfolded. Officer Grant stood at the side, stiff as stone. His usual certainty had been replaced by a quiet tension. He kept his hands behind his back, eyes down, trying to stay composed. But it was clear, the room had seen the cracks. Meanwhile, Chief Ward sat poised, reviewing a slim folder she'd brought with her. Her presence radiated calm strength, but underneath, she felt the familiar ache, not from this moment, but from years of walking into rooms where her competence was second-guessed before a word was spoken. She had faced worse. Much worse. But this was symbolic. A courtroom, a place of order, law, and supposed impartiality, had still been a stage for bias masked as procedure. A young public defender, Maria Torres, leaned in from the next bench. "Chief Ward," she whispered. "For what it's worth, that was the most composed thing I've ever seen in this room." Ward offered her a small, grateful nod. "Thank you." At the back, Judge Keller motioned to the clerk. A few moments later, he requested a short recess, citing internal matters. Most people cleared out, but Ward stayed seated. Grant, however, made his way toward her, reluctantly. His steps were slow, unsure. This wasn't protocol, this was something else. Something personal. He stopped a few feet away. "Chief Ward," he began, struggling to find footing. "I owe you an apology." She closed the folder and looked up. Her eyes didn't hold anger. Just clarity. "You owe it to more than just me," she said evenly. "This isn't about bruised pride. It's about the lens through which you, and others, make judgments." Grant nodded, slowly. "You're right. I saw someone I didn't recognize and assumed you didn't belong. That's on me. That's on how you've been trained to view authority," she corrected. "And who fits the mold." Silence hung between them for a moment. Then she added, "You have a choice now. Let this be a moment of embarrassment, or a point of change." Grant met her eyes for the first time. "I want it to be the second one." She stood up, collected her folder, and stepped past him. "Then start acting like it." By the time the recess ended, the courtroom had repopulated, but the atmosphere had shifted. Whispers gave way to attentive silence. Everyone was alert now, aware that something bigger than a routine hearing had taken place. Chief Ward remained near the front, quietly observing the proceedings. Though she wasn't here in an official capacity, her presence anchored the room. Attorneys were more precise. Officers more measured. Even Judge Keller sat a little straighter. Back near the doors, Officer Grant stood guard again, but differently. No longer posturing. No longer scanning the room through the same narrow lens. He was watching, learning, recalibrating. After the final case of the afternoon, Judge Keller dismissed the court, then turned to Ward. "Chief Ward," he called from the bench. "If you're available for a few minutes, I'd appreciate a word." She nodded once, approached, and the two stepped into a side chamber off the main floor. Inside, the judge gestured for her to sit. "I want to thank you for how you handled today," he said, voice low but sincere. "A lot of people talk about leadership. Few show it in real time." Ward replied evenly, "People pay attention more to how you respond to disrespect than to praise. I've learned that over the years." Keller gave a faint smile. "This department, this city, they're in good hands." "Let's hope so," she said. "Because leadership isn't about the badge or the title. It's about setting a standard. Quietly, consistently. Especially when no one's clapping for you." The judge nodded, absorbing her words. As she exited the chamber, several staff members quietly nodded or gave respectful glances, a subtle acknowledgement of the change she had triggered in just one afternoon. Outside the courthouse, the sun was beginning to set, casting gold across the city skyline. Ward paused on the steps, took a breath, and let the moment settle. She wasn't here to make a scene. She wasn't here to prove a point. She was here to lead, and after today, the city knew her name. By the next morning, the story had already made its way through the department. Not because Chief Ward had spoken about it. She hadn't said a word. But silence doesn't stop echoes. At roll call, officers exchanged quiet glances. Some had heard exaggerated versions, that Grant had been reprimanded on the spot, or even suspended. Others knew the truth, no shouting, no punishment. Just a calm correction that carried more weight than any disciplinary report ever could. Inside the precinct, Ward walked through the halls as if nothing had happened. She greeted dispatchers by name, asked about weekend patrol rotations, and reviewed pending community outreach initiatives. But no one treated her the same as before. They were more careful now, not out of fear, but awareness. The kind that lingers after a mirror is held up and no one likes what they see. Officer Grant sat at his desk in the back, filling out a report. When she passed him, he stood. "Chief," he said, with a nod. Not stiff. Not forced. "Officer," she returned, pausing. Then she did something that caught him off guard. She extended her hand. He hesitated, then shook it. "I meant what I said," he told her quietly. "About changing." "I remember," she replied. "Let's see it." As she moved on, Sergeant Delgado leaned in behind Grant. "You know she didn't have to say a word, right? Could have filed a complaint and let the rest unfold." Grant nodded slowly. "I know. That's what makes it hit harder." Word of what happened in court eventually reached the mayor's office. Not through formal channels, but through a quiet buzz among staffers and aides. Later that week, during a city safety briefing, the mayor turned to Ward. "I heard you made quite an impression downtown," he said with a smirk. Ward didn't flinch. "I didn't go there to make one." The mayor nodded. "All the better that you did." What had happened in that courtroom wasn't just a moment. It was a shift, in tone, in posture, in expectation. And without shouting, without demanding, Chief Alexandria Ward had raised the bar for everyone watching. Weeks passed, and the ripple effects of that day began to show. Officer Grant, once quick to judge and slow to listen, started attending the new training sessions focused on awareness and respect that Chief Ward personally helped implement. He found himself reflecting more, not only on how he treated others but on the broader culture within the department. Chief Ward made it clear that her leadership wasn't about authority for its own sake, but about creating an environment where everyone felt valued and heard. She held open forums, encouraged honest conversations, and pushed for changes in policies that had long gone unquestioned. One afternoon, during a city council meeting, Ward addressed the audience with a steady voice. "We serve a community rich in diversity," she said. "Our role is to protect and uplift every individual, not just those who fit a certain image or expectation. Leadership means looking beyond assumptions, recognizing potential, and holding ourselves accountable to the highest standards." The council members listened intently. Questions followed, and Ward answered with clarity and conviction. It was clear that her message was more than rhetoric, it was a promise backed by action. Back at the precinct, Grant found himself volunteering for community outreach programs, working alongside officers of all backgrounds. His respect for Chief Ward grew beyond her title. It was rooted in how she led by example, demanding better not just from others, but from herself. One day, as Ward walked the precinct floor, Grant approached her quietly. "Chief, thank you for showing me what real leadership looks like," he said sincerely. She smiled. "Thank you for being willing to change. That's how progress begins." The city was watching, and Chief Alexandria Ward was ready to lead it into a new era. Not with force or fury, but with dignity, respect, and unwavering resolve. Months after the courtroom incident, the police department had transformed in ways many hadn't thought possible. Chief Ward's leadership created new channels for dialogue, accountability, and collaboration between officers and the communities they served. Officer Grant, once skeptical and guarded, had become an advocate for change within the force. He often spoke about the lessons he learned, not just about respect, but about humility and growth. At a community event focused on rebuilding trust, Grant took the stage alongside Chief Ward. The crowd, diverse and hopeful, listened as they shared their journey, from confrontation to understanding. "We all make mistakes," Grant said, "but it's how we respond that defines us." Chief Ward showed me what true leadership means, leading with integrity and openness. I'm proud to stand here today as part of that change. Chief Ward smiled, her eyes shining with quiet determination. Change isn't easy. It requires honesty, patience, and the courage to face uncomfortable truths. But together, we can build a safer, fairer city for everyone. As applause filled the air, it was clear the story was no longer about one officer or one chief, it was about a community ready to move forward, together. The transformation within the police department was only the beginning. Chief Alexandria Ward knew the real challenge lay beyond the walls of the precinct and courthouse, it was in the hearts and minds of the community she served, and in the culture she sought to reshape. In the weeks following the courtroom incident, Chief Ward organized a series of listening sessions across the city. These gatherings brought together community leaders, residents, activists, and officers to openly discuss their concerns, hopes, and frustrations. The sessions were raw and honest, stories of fear, mistrust, and past failures came to light alongside calls for fairness, respect, and partnership. At one such session, held in a modest community center on the city's south side, a woman stood up with tears in her eyes. She spoke of her son's encounter with law enforcement, a moment that had left the family shaken and afraid. Ward listened carefully, her expression solemn but engaged. When the woman finished, Ward promised action, not just words. "I hear you," Ward said firmly. "No family should live in fear of those sworn to protect them. This department will work tirelessly to rebuild trust and ensure accountability at every level." Inside the precinct, changes were underway. New training programs emphasized empathy, cultural competence, and ethical decision-making. Officers like Grant, who had once been resistant, now led workshops on the importance of self-awareness and community connection. It wasn't always easy, some resisted the shift, clinging to old habits and skepticism, but the momentum was growing. Ward's approach was methodical. She held herself and her team accountable, establishing clear benchmarks for progress. Quarterly reports on use of force incidents, community complaints, and officer conduct were made public for the first time. Transparency became a cornerstone of her leadership. Still, challenges remained. Negative headlines occasionally surfaced, testing the department's resilience and commitment. But Ward confronted each crisis head-on, using them as opportunities to reinforce the need for systemic change. One evening, after a long day of meetings and debriefs, Ward sat alone in her office overlooking the city skyline. The lights below shimmered like stars against the dusk. She thought about the long road ahead, how much work was left to do, and how vital it was to keep pushing forward. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Grant: "Thank you for believing in me. Proud to be part of this team." She smiled, knowing that true transformation wasn't about any one person but about collective effort. As Chief Ward prepared for another day, she felt a deep sense of purpose. Leadership, she reminded herself, was not a destination but a continuous journey, a promise to the community that every voice mattered, every action counted, and justice would not be an ideal but a lived reality. The city was changing, slowly but surely. And under her guidance, the department was becoming a force not just of law, but of trust, respect, and hope. The city's streets carried their own stories, stories of hope, struggle, and resilience. Chief Alexandria Ward understood that real change required more than new policies, it demanded rebuilding the fragile bridge between law enforcement and the community. One Saturday morning, Ward visited a local youth center in a neighborhood long burdened by tension and misunderstanding. The center was alive with laughter and activity, children playing basketball, teenagers gathered around tables, community volunteers organizing art projects. Ward was greeted warmly by Malik, the center's director, who had worked tirelessly to create a safe haven for young people. "Chief Ward, it means a lot that you're here," Malik said, shaking her hand firmly. "This neighborhood has had its share of pain. We need more of your kind of leadership." Ward smiled. "I'm here to listen and learn, Malik. We want to work with you, not over you." Together, they walked through the center, meeting teens and volunteers. Ward spoke openly about the challenges police officers face daily, the pressure, the split-second decisions, the weight of responsibility, but she also acknowledged the community's pain and distrust. One young woman, Jasmine, approached Ward hesitantly. "Why should we believe things will really change? We've heard promises before." Ward looked her in the eye. "Because this time, we're doing things differently. It starts with listening and being accountable. And it doesn't stop until trust is earned." That afternoon, Ward announced a new initiative, Community Partnership Officers. Selected officers would be assigned to neighborhoods not as enforcers but as liaisons, attending local events, supporting youth programs, and fostering ongoing dialogue. Back at the precinct, Grant was chosen to be one of the first officers in this role. His own transformation mirrored the department's larger journey, from skepticism to commitment. During his first community meeting, Grant stood before a crowd that watched him cautiously. He spoke plainly. "I'm not here just to enforce the law. I'm here to listen, to understand, and to build trust." It wasn't perfect. Some residents remained wary, some officers uncomfortable. But the cracks in the old walls were beginning to show. Meanwhile, Chief Ward met regularly with city officials, community groups, and her own team, balancing the complexities of leadership with the urgent need for progress. One evening, during a strategy session, she reflected aloud, "Change is uncomfortable. It challenges habits, assumptions, and sometimes pride. But it's necessary. Our job isn't just to police, it's to protect the dignity and rights of every person." Her staff nodded, inspired by her clarity and resolve. Outside, the city's lights blinked against the night sky, a reminder that the work was ongoing, the journey far from over. But with leaders like Ward and officers like Grant, the future held a promise, one where justice was not just enforced, but understood, where respect was given not out of obligation, but from genuine connection. As dawn approached, Chief Ward looked out over the city again. She felt a quiet confidence, knowing that change wasn't a single act, but a collective, enduring commitment. The bridge between law enforcement and community was being rebuilt, plank by plank, conversation by conversation, day by day. And this time, it was built to last. Years later, the day arrived when Chief Alexandria Ward's efforts were no longer a hopeful experiment but a recognized success story. The police department had transformed into a model of community partnership and accountability, drawing attention from cities across the country. At a public ceremony held in the city's main square, residents gathered to celebrate the strides made in public safety and trust. Children ran freely, families shared smiles, and officers stood among neighbors, no longer strangers, but allies. Ward took the stage, her presence commanding yet warm. She looked out at the crowd, faces of every background, every age, and spoke from the heart. "Leadership is not about the power we hold, but the responsibility we embrace," she said. "It is about listening when it's difficult, acting when it's necessary, and leading with integrity every single day." She paused, letting the words sink in. "This city taught me that change is never easy. It requires patience, courage, and the willingness to face our own flaws. But together, we've shown that progress is possible." Officer Grant stood near the front, proud and humbled. From the officer who once challenged her presence in court to one of her strongest supporters, his journey mirrored the department's transformation. After the speech, Ward met with community members, shaking hands and sharing conversations. The barriers that once divided them had been replaced with bridges of trust and mutual respect. As the sun set behind the skyline, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple, Chief Ward reflected quietly. Her path had not been without obstacles, but every challenge had strengthened her resolve. Her legacy wasn't just a badge or a title, it was a movement toward justice, dignity, and unity. And the city, forever changed, looked forward to a future led by those who understood that true leadership uplifts everyone.